Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 883 for the 7th of September 2025. Richard Saunders coming to you from Sydney, Australia. And in today's episode, we look to the stars. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Well, some of them are very far from little, of course. And we know that, thank you, science, due to the modern research done and the observations by modern astronomy. We know that some stars are so huge that they put our own little star into insignificance almost. But what do the astrologers think of things like that? We're going to be looking, coming up at the top of the show, into astrology. A little bit of a background, a little bit of speculation, a little bit of a meander through the stars when we look at astrology. Following that, it's a segment, part one of the three-part series, a segment on Gone and Forgotten. Now, these are modalities and belief systems and methodologies and devices that were once thought to be the next best thing. You bet they work. It's written in the stars. My spiritual advisor told me, but have now faded, more or less. And over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at quite a few of these. And this is based on a story published in the Skeptic magazine, the journal from Australian Skeptics. In fact, it was published in the very last published issue. In other words, the last paper issue. There will be stories published online, hopefully in the not-too-distant future. And then to round off the show, back to the stars again in the Trove segment, where we look at more astrology from newspapers from around the world. Now, speaking of astrology, just the other night here in Sydney, we had skeptics in the pub, and our speaker was very good. He was talking about the end of the world, but I took the opportunity to catch up with Tim Mendham. Well, we're here at Skeptics in the pub. No Maynard tonight. He couldn't make it. I'm playing the part of Maynard. I'm with Tim Mendham, who you might remember from years ago used to edit the magazine. Hello, Tim.
I remember those days.
You remember those days?
You look like Maynard too, actually.
I do look like Maynard. We're often confused with each, apart from the hair. Apart from the hair. Tim, we're talking on the show today about astrology. And just on the big screen a moment ago, we were showing a program from 1992, which you could have been in the audience, we're not sure, which was a talk show about astrology.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where they had astrologers and skeptics up at the same time with a panel. Not a panel, like an arena, in a way. It was the Couchman program.
Yeah.
And each person sort of putting forward the case for their belief in astrology or they're not. They were practicing astrologers that we know of who are still around, some of them. And it's quite interesting to see them sort of 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, how they look. And some of the skeptics too look very, very much younger.
Yeah, in the audience there was a smattering of astrologers who some of whom have dead, but there's a good contingent of skeptics who we have both known over the years.
Absolutely, yeah. And sort of it's fun to spot them, actually. Spot the skeptic and say, oh, God, they look so young. they look vibrant. And some of them, of course, are no longer with us, unfortunately, which is sad. But it's quite good to actually look back at those programs and see that how they were set up and what the arguments were either way. And the interesting thing from my point of view is that they're much the same arguments as was ever sort of stated. And that's the thing that can be annoying. With astrology, I don't know, women's magazines still have astrology columns. Do people still believe as fervently in astrology? I'm sure some do. I think younger people tend to regard it as a what? a WTF moment sort of about astrology. I don't think they take it very seriously at all. I hope.
Yeah, I hope you're right. So the final question is, do you know your star sign?
Yes, I'm an Ophiucan. I do know my star sign, but the trouble is, of course, that the star signs have actually shifted.
They have, yeah.
Yeah, by the precession of the equinox, which is a really nice thing to drop at dinner parties, the concept, but they've shifted, so I'm not Aquarius, as I thought I was. I think I'm either the one before or the one after. Not quite sure which.
For most of my life, I thought I was Sagittarius, but it turns out I'm Scorpio. So there you go.
There we go. And of course, also the star signs in the astrology, they're all evenly spaced, but they're not that way in real life. I mean, Scorpio is, I think, is about 9 days. So, I mean, it's a funny old world, is astrology, actually, and that's one of the funniest bits.
Well, Tim, I'll be visiting the Mendham mansions before long, and we can record some more Book of Tim.
Yes, we have sold off Skeptic's Towers.
Yes.
That's gone to a major property developer, but we still have the Mendham mansions actually to fill the gap.
Well, there we go. Thank you, Tim Mendham. Great to catch up with you, and I'll be seeing you before too long. I'm sure we can record more of the Book of Tim. But now it's time for me to run downstairs, and I think I'm in the mood for a choc chip muffin. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Oh my stars! Star signs, astrology, looking to the heavens, the little dots of light in the sky that people over the millennia have woven into stories. It's only natural, I suppose, for, well, most of human existence there wasn't much light pollution, and the night sky would be full of wonders. No wonder, then, cultures from all over the world, from the European cultures to the Americas to even here in Australia, millennia ago, looked up at the night sky and, well, shall we say, connected the dots, used for all sorts of reasons, for superstitious reasons, for religious reasons, for storytelling reasons, to tell the time of the year. When this particular constellation appears in this particular spot, it might be good for fishing or hunting and so on. And since we are storytelling animals, it's hardly a surprise that stories grew up around these dots in the sky, great adventures and tales of daring and maidens and heroes and villains and all sorts of things. And to this very day, I suspect you, dear listener, you can tell me what your star sign is, according to one specific astrological chart. Now, for many years I thought I was a Sagittarius, but due to the precession of the equinox and the shifting of the dates and so on, turns out I'm a Scorpio. How about that? I wonder if star signs still have the same attraction in our society that they used to, especially when I was growing up. I remember people would talk about their star signs a lot. Astrology is one of our oldest belief systems. It certainly predates many religions. It claims that the positions and movements of the celestial bodies, the stars, the planets, especially the planets, I think they talk about Mars being in the constellation of Aries and so on, affect human affairs and you personally, though it remains popular today in the form of horoscopes and zodiac signs in newspapers and magazines, and sometimes, sadly enough, on TV news reports. Its scientific credibility has long been questioned. From a skeptical perspective, astrology's historical roots explains its presence, but the claims of astrology collapse under scrutiny. Now, when we think about the particular astrology you might be familiar with, in more or less Western cultures, we can trace that back to Mesopotamia around the 3rd millennium BC. Babylon priests observed the heavens and began correlating celestial phenomena with events on Earth. But many other cultures have been doing this for a very long time. And over the centuries, the observations formed a systematic tradition. By about 400 BC, it migrated, the belief system. Naturally enough, these things are spread to Greece and other parts of Europe, where it merged with philosophical and scientific thought of the time. In ancient stories, astrology served practical and cultural functions before the rise of modern astronomy The sky was looked upon as the most predictable clock for many things available. As we said before, you could read the skies at night, the stars, and know if a certain constellation or a certain star appeared in a certain spot. It might be good for certain activities like hunting. Over time, influential people like kings and emperors often consulted astrologers to guide decisions. During the European Renaissance, astrology was studied alongside astronomy, and many early scientists, including Kepler and Galileo, would experiment with it. However, the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution brought a shift. As astronomy advanced, astrology's functions began to decline. The celestial mechanics of the heavens, described mathematically by Newton, revealed precise physical laws governing planetary motion, leaving little room for the mysticism. While astronomy flourished, astrology was increasingly regarded as superstition. Yet, despite its fall from academic respectability, astrology persisted in popular culture as it does today, eventually finding a place in newspapers, lifestyle magazines, and so on. What's your star sign at parties? But astrology remains appealing for many people for mainly social reasons, I think. Horoscopes provide seemingly personalized guidance, and people like nothing more than to think they're getting a little glimpse, a little insight into their own destinies. The description of zodiac traits are often broad and flattering, leading people to recognize themselves. It's the old Barnum statements at work. People of your star sign, insert star sign here, get on well with most people, but not everybody. They are often misunderstood and have had a trauma in the last few years they're trying to still get over. You can see where that's going. Although many people don't take astrology that seriously, they still have a look at their star signs every day in the newspaper. Hopefully most people regarded it as a bit of fun for 2 or 3 minutes. Now, from a scientific point of view, astrology fails on empirical, logical, and methodological grounds. Scientific inquiry requires testable predictions, consistency, and mechanisms of causation. Astrology fails on all these counts. First, how does it work? The mechanism of astrology. There is no known physical force by which distant planets or constellations could influence human personality at birth. Gravity from those faraway constellations have really no bearing on what happens here on Earth. And it would take, in some cases, hundreds or thousands of years for the gravity or the light or other influences to travel from those constellations to the Earth. And has often been said, the gravitational pull of the doctors standing nearby as you're born is much stronger than the planet Mars, for example. Now, when we come to test astrology, it fails again. Controlled studies have repeatedly shown that astrological charts cannot predict personality, intelligence, or life outcomes. A study conducted in 1985, where astrologers were asked to match birth charts with psychological profiles, their accuracy was no better than random guessing, undermining astrology's predictive claims. And astrology suffers from inconsistency. Different astrological traditions, Western, Chinese, other parts of the world use different zodiacs, different calculations, producing different readings, often contradictory. Even within Western astrology, practitioners frequently disagree on interpretations, reducing reliability. Astrology is a rich part of human tradition and culture, without any doubt. Its presence reflects more on the cultural traditions of our species and the psychological appeal rather than being a true device. Astrology, I think, is best understood as a cultural artifact, a window into our past, how our ancestors understood and tried to put themselves within the context of the universe. While it can still be appreciated for its symbolic and cultural value and historical value, its claims about influencing human destiny simply do not stand up to scientific scrutiny. maybe we shouldn't be too downcast on those people who believe that looking at the stars will bring them luck or fortune or something. I mean, a lot of people really do enjoy it. And
Hey, Richard!
Hello? Hello? Psychic Penny? What? Where are you?
I'm floating around the ethereal plane with my friend, the skeptical fairy godmother from the internet. And we're listening to the Skeptic Zone and your segment on astrology.
But I'm still recording it. You can't be listening to it. It hasn't been published yet.
There is no such thing as time in the ethereal plane, you know.
Right. Okay. Well, say hello to the skeptical fairy for me. What can I do for you?
Well, I just wanted to remind the listeners that I am the world's #1 astrologer in Canada, or at least on my street. And my predictions are just as accurate as any astrologer ever. Not only that, but my horoscopes are exclusive to this podcast.
Yes. We're very grateful. Thank you, Psychic Penny.
Time to go. The skeptical fairy and I are off to do some shopping. I wonder if maple syrup works on Japanese pancakes. Farewell.
Well, that was a bit unexpected. Is she gone? Yes. And coming up soon on the Skeptic Zone, hopefully without interruption, we'll look at another classic case of skeptical investigation.
Farewell.
Hello, smart women. This week on the podcast, Kat Mack, who is my friend of a skeptical mindset who's in Canada. Hello, Kat. Hey, Annie. Lovely to see you again. Lovely to see you too. And what is it we're talking about, Kat, on the podcast today?
Stockholm Syndrome.
And why are we talking about that?
Because it's all a myth.
Stockholm Syndrome, a myth. Oh my God. Everyone, tune in. It's an emergency. See you soon. Bye.
Now, it's easy to think sometimes that all our skeptical activism for years and years and years doesn't amount to much. There's still people out there pretending to be psychics. There's still people out there using aura cameras, which are obviously gimmicked fake to produce funny pictures, and then you pay for interpretation and so on. People still divine for water, people still consult tarot cards, and so on. Now, a couple of weeks ago on the Skeptic Zone, I posed the question, what would the world be like without the modern skeptical movement? And for the last issue, the very last issue of the Skeptic magazine, that's the last printed issue, not the future, which will be online, I wrote a piece where I and Tim Mendham looked at various modalities that we've probably all heard of, and their current state. And what this does is it serves to remind us that there are many things that at the time were considered by the New Agers and the believers and so on as to be the next best thing, the truth, the reality of the situation, the modality that's going to work, etc., which have been consigned more or less to the dustbin, the trash bin of bad ideas. Let's take a look at a few, and again, this is in the Skeptic magazine, the very last issue, which is volume 25, number 2 from June-July 2025. Now, there are so many of these once highly lauded claims and products that I'll break this into a 3-part series over the next 3 weeks. So this is part 1. the feature is called Gone and Forgotten. Richard Saunders looks back at those claims that didn't last the distance or cut the mustard. Over the years of skeptical inquiry, and after quite a few visits to the regular Mind, Body, Spirit exhibitions, we have come across many claims of pseudoscience and the paranormal. At the time, members of the public and members of the media gave them credence beyond what they deserved. Some have stuck around, even prospered, UFOs and psychic powers to name two. But many more have died the death of irrelevance and fast fashion. Some might still be around, but only as a vestige of their once high-profile status. Others truly are forgotten. So who cares about these historical discarded artefacts? Well, we do, if only in the interests of historical discourse and as a warning to watch the skies for the next meteoric rise and fall of this month's unconvincing trend. Here are some. 12-strand DNA activation. Claim. Humans have dormant spiritual DNA strands that could be reawakened through vibration crystals or light codes. Status. Brief internet popularity, now mostly regarded as pseudoscientific and fringe. 2020-12 phenomenon. Claim. The 2020-12 phenomenon was a range of beliefs from cataclysmic or transformative events, spiritual awakenings and other vague New Age terms were common, which would occur on or around the 21st of December 2012, based on interpretations of the Mesoamerican long count calendar. Status. The date came and went. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, and 2012 was soon forgotten. Aquarian age prediction. Claim. We are entering an age of universal peace, higher consciousness, and telepathic evolution. Status. The age of Aquarius became more symbolic than literal. Few modern New Agers use the old framework seriously. Aura photography. Claim. Using a special camera, one's aura could be photographed and studied by experts who could interpret the colours seen. Status. Relegated to a novelty at Mind, Body, Spirit festivals. The colours seen in the Polaroid photographs are generated by software within the camera. Bermuda Triangle. Claim. Ships and aeroplanes, especially military, would regularly disappear without trace in numbers completely out of proportion to other regions of the ocean. Status. Largely forgotten or not even heard of by today's younger generation. Research shows that various losses at sea are not more likely in the Bermuda Triangle than any other heavily traversed area of the ocean. The term is now more likely to be used to explain missing socks than missing vessels. Bigfoot, Yeti and Yowie. Claim. Large hominid creatures unknown to science that roam the northwest of the United States, the Himalayas and Australia. Status. The claims for these creatures had their heyday from the 1950s to the 1990s. Although not entirely forgotten, they are now largely irrelevant, as decades of no evidence have metaphorically killed the creatures. Breatharianism. Claim. Advanced spiritual beings, gurus and such, could live without food or water, sustained only by prana or light. Status. Largely discredited after several high-profile deaths and fraud cases. Was also exposed by the 60 Minutes program in Australia by Richard Carlton. Bible Code, also known as the Torah Code. Claim. Alleged encrypted messages and world predictions hidden within the text of the Hebrew Bible, specifically the Torah. The code involves finding words or phrases hidden in a specific pattern of letters, often using equidistant letter sequencing. Status. Debunked in the late 1990s by Brendan McKay and others, who found similar codes in non-biblical texts like Moby Dick and War and Peace. Bioresonance devices. Claim. A box or a computer with flashing lights that would scan your body, discover your ills, and send vibrations and frequencies back to zap your problems away. Status. Once common at Mind, Body, Spirit festivals and marketed at naive naturopaths, Metatron NLS being a prime example, These boxes of non-tricks have been relegated to underground status owing to intervention from the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Biorhythm charts claim people's physical, emotional, and intellectual abilities follow predictable 23, 28, and 33-day cycles. Status, once popular in books and software, now considered pseudoscience and mostly abandoned. Channeling entities, for example Ramtha or Ashtar Command, claim spiritual figures from higher planes or alien civilizations would speak through chosen human channels to guide humanity. Status, still has isolated followers but lost the mainstream New Age spotlight. See The Great Carlos Hoax by James Randi and Richard Carlton. Chariots of the Gods, 1960s space tech, claim ancient civilizations relied on technology from other planets to thrive and recorded such technology in artwork and carvings. Status, the technology seen in the art seemed to vaguely match spacecraft from the 1960s. Hardly a surprise, as the book Chariots of the Gods, was from that era. It seems the aliens did not advance. Nonetheless, even if Chariots author Eric von Däniken had been abducted from the headlines, there are some to this day who still claim that ancient aliens did play a role in early civilizations. Color therapy glasses claim wearing tinted lenses could balance your aura, moods, and energy fields. Status, briefly trendy, especially in the 1980s and 90s, but mostly disappeared from wellness circles. Creationism claim the universe was created by a god about 6,000 years ago, and the Christian Bible is an historically accurate account, including stories such as Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark. Status, although still strongly believed in by many, particularly in the USA, the belief and influence on education in Australia has plummeted in the last 4 decades. Australian skeptics can take some credit for this. Well, that's the end of part 1 of our look at Gone and Forgotten. Next week in part 2, we'll be looking at such things as crop circles, firewalking, and graphology.
Hey, Adrian.
Hi, Susan. Out for some shopping, eh?
Yep, I'm stocking up on this imitation maple syrup from Australia.
Imitation? Imitation? No. You need to buy the real thing from Canada.
But I saw the TV commercial, and it said that noted pancake-eating expert Richard Saunders says it's the best maple syrup money can buy, and 60% of people preferred it in a blind taste test. Everyone knows it's the best.
Oh, come on, Susan. You know better than that. That's the argument from authority.
It is?
Or is it the argument from popularity? It might be another logical fallacy. I'm not sure.
Really? If only we had a way of finding out.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my, it's the skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet.
Yes, that's right. But how did you know who I am?
I listened to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Also, didn't you used to be the tooth fairy?
Oh, yes. I remember you. I'll never forget your left upper lateral incisor. Would you like it back?
No, it's okay. You keep it.
Hey, skeptical fairy godmother angel. What are you doing here in the supermarket?
I've come to tell you that you can find out about 40 different logical fallacies on YouTube in one handy location. Listen to each one to hear an explanation and examples of how they might be used.
Oh.
Just go to tinyurl.com/logicalzone and you'll find all the logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma with handy time codes to get to the exact one you want.
Who is Michelle Bickersma?
Just a friend of mine.
tinyurl.com/logicalzone. Thank you, skeptical fairy godmother angel. I guess you'll disappear in a puff of smoke and thunder now, eh?
Not quite yet. I have a bit of shopping to do. Susan?
Yes?
Where do I find the Australian maple syrup?
What? No. Come with me, so-called skeptical fairy. This is real maple syrup from Canada. Made with real maple.
Now it's time to look to the stars above and below. Well, they're all around us, 360 degrees in every direction, I guess you would say. As we look to the digital newspaper archives from around the world, and this week we're going to be keeping with our theme today, more or less, a little bit. We're going to be looking for references to astrology. Yes, divination by the stars above. And this week we're going once more to the website of Google Newspapers. We've typed in our search, and this time I've added the word skeptical to the search. So these following items mention astrology and somewhere skeptical. And we start with the Evening Times from Scotland, dated the 11th of September 1980, price 10 pence. And it says here, Scotland's greatest evening paper. And the heading is Life in the Stars Day 2. Many child guidance experts believe that astrology charts can help parents cope with their children's problems. I see. They believe that particularly in the difficult teenage years, knowledge of youngsters' characters through astrological studies can mean the difference between a happy home life and the torment of rebellion. Sex, drugs, vandalism. These are all problems which could be avoided if parents would follow the guidelines set out by astrologers for their children and themselves. And the word "and" is in capitals. Now, as parents seek ways of coping with teenage rebellion, of guiding their adolescent children into the right career and partnerships, more and more are turning to astrology. Month by month, it plays a bigger role in British life. These parents believe that a chart drawn up at birth can help them understand their child's character, instead of muddling through, wondering why he won't talk to them, turns into a bully, or insists he wants to be a racing driver when dad is a staid accountant. And other parents who are skeptical about the foretelling aspect of astrology admit there are strong grounds for believing children born at certain times of the year have definite characteristics. Today's astrologer, Eva Petulengro, gives in her chart an insight into the problems you could encounter with teenage children around the zodiac. And interestingly enough, I did a little bit of research, and Eva Petulengro only died a few years ago. There's a headline here from the Brighton and Hove News dated actually just last year, on the 26th of May. The Brighton clairvoyant astrologer and author Eva Petulengro has died aged 85. And it would appear, though, I presume here, possibly her daughter is carrying on the tradition. And indeed, I found a short video here from 11 years ago entitled Meet Eva Petulengro, Brighton's Clairvoyant to the Stars.
Well, my name is Eva Petulengro. I've been in Brighton since I was 20 years old, and I've been working here ever since. Can't get away from the place. I read palms, I do horoscopes, and I do tarot cards, and I'm down on the beach, and I can work in the middle of London or New York or Hollywood, but I love it down here. I have got so many interesting clients that I've had. Royalty, Prince Edward, I told him that he was going to get married and how many children he'd have. And I told him he'd lose his job in 18 months' time, which he did. People like Joan Collins, Michael Caine and his wife Shakira, many movie stars, people in all walks of life. Well, I just hope that they don't get too much sunshine. Make sure you've got plenty of oil on you, and don't forget to come and visit Eva for some advice and guidance.
Now I wonder if Prince Edward was really a client of hers, or she just sent him some unsolicited advice. We'll never know, probably. Anyway, this article goes on. Have you a star story? Do you have a star story to tell? Has your chart prediction ever come true? Write to Star Story, Evening Times, 195 Albion Street, Glasgow, G11QP, and tell us about it. We'll pay £10 for the best letter and £1 for every other one published. And what follows is star signs. In fact, there's a photograph of Eva here, hovering over a crystal ball, and the big headline is Drink, Drugs and Sex, a Warning in the Stars, Eva Petulengo's Chart for Teenagers, and the whole story was by Marion Pallister. But there follows horoscopes. Well, let's have a quick look at one or two, and we'll just pick one at random here. Gemini. Male, at 16, he's independent and expects you to be too. Shows no particular interest in the opposite sex, but is popular and has a terrific sense of humour. He's a likeable and friendly person. At 17, he falls in love hard. Lasts for 2 or 3 years. Female. She is the most promiscuous girl in the zodiac if she is not given the most careful guidance by her parents. At 16, she has a strong artistic flair, much sought after by the opposite sex. Very much aware of herself as a female, she plays it out to the full. She goes for older men and falls for any line. What about Virgo, if you were born, well, according to these dates, which are now superseded by the precession of the equinox? According to this, Virgo is August 24th to September 23rd. Male. At 16, he is still the good boy and a steady influence on his young friends. Newly adolescent Virgos are sensible sorts until they let a girl get them into hot water. If it only happens once, you could forgive him, but he falls for the girlish line again and again. So it's the girls that get this boy into hot water. I don't think that is really taking account for your actions, is it? Female. At 16, she blossoms, finds her identity, and is very much more aware of life. Sometimes the conceited streak is obvious, but she usually has cause. Very generous, but she likes to play hard to get with boys until she catches them. Likes to go out 7 nights a week. And now here's a story by Jamie Portman in the Calgary Herald, dated the 31st of July, 1968. And I was living, well, some hours away from Calgary in July 1968 in a little town in Saskatchewan. Crystal ball. The Oxford Dictionary describes astrology as, quote, the art of juggling the reputed occult influences of the stars on human affairs, end quote. It is a fascinating subject, even for those who don't believe in it. Perhaps we need a touch of the fantastic and incredible in our lives. It's fun reading the daily horoscope or having your fortune told or playing with the Ouija board. For many people, this sort of activity is a game, a cheerful game of make-believe. But even the true believer is incensed at the mere suggestion that astrology is a mere game or toy, unworthy of serious consideration. Many human beings are genuinely convinced that the stars, or the juxtaposition thereof, can predict the future. Any skeptic who dares to dismiss this belief as superstitious piffle is apt to get a fat lip. But really, can anyone believe in the type of astrology matter written by, say, Miss Elizabeth Tressilian of Castlecombe, England? Miss Tressilian recently published a volume called The Dog's Horoscope Book. Her thesis is that every prospective canine owner should also know the birthday of the dog he's buying. Consider these two sample tidbits. Aries, March 21 to April 20. The Me First breed devoted to getting ahead, whether they're after tree trunks or dog biscuits. They will drive you mad in their pell-mell rush to be top dogs. Best owners, Leo and Sagittarius. Virgo, August 22nd to September 22, according to this. Essentially a pet, loving authority, long to sit on your lap, utterly adoptable, and so keen to help that the morning newspaper will disintegrate from his dribbling enthusiasm. Best owners, Taurus, Capricorn. Now, anyone who believes this sort of puffball reasoning will probably also believe that fluidization is a communist plot, or that it's bad luck to walk under a ladder. And yet, I wonder whether I'm in any position to criticize, since whenever I spill salt, I throw a pinch of it over my left shoulder. Maybe we should compromise and say that only a certain percent of astrological forecasting is superstitious nonsense. But what percent? 50? 75? 95? One can't be completely skeptical, not when there have been astrologers of as uncanny accuracy as Britain's Edward Whitman. I stumbled on Mr. Whitman's name last week while checking out a totally different subject in the files of the Herald Library. It was merely by chance that my eye lightened on a yellowing clipping of a news story published on April 5, 1961. It was a Canadian press interview with Mr. Whitman, and he was described as the man who successfully predicted Britain's 1926 general strike, the 1939 German invasion of Poland, and the 1958 riots in Africa. What was most interesting, however, was Mr. Whitman's forecast uttered in 1961 for the next few years. He described 1968 as a year of, quote, world political upheaval, end quote. How does this prediction measure up? In Western Europe countries this year, students' riots have been rampant. France was paralysed by a general strike, the United States has been attacked by a wave of civil disorders, and in recent months has been the scene of 2 tragic assassinations. In Eastern Europe, further strains on communist solidarity have been created by Czechoslovakia's revolutionary turn towards liberalism. Africa is in ferment, and China hovers on civil war. What was it that Mr. Whitman predicted for 1968? Quote, world political upheaval, end quote. It makes one wonder. Of course, we don't know what else he predicted for that year, and one could predict for any year, I think, a certain amount of political upheaval. But as we discovered in the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project, if you make enough predictions, some of them are bound to come true. And finally, from a newspaper called the Lawrence Journal World on the 4th of March 1977, and I think this is from Kansas. Zodiac may be useful, professor says. Zodiac personality linked by study. London, Associated Press. A survey of 2,000 people shows that astrologers may be right in claiming a link between birth date and personality, says a psychology professor who also claims there is a connection between race and intelligence. Writing in the Evening Standard, Dr. Hans Eisneck of London University said he and 2 collaborators checked a well-known astrological theory against the answers to personality questionnaires. All sounds very legitimate. The theory is that people born under the zodiac water signs of Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces tend to be very emotional, and that extroverts tend to be born under the odd-numbered signs Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius and Aquarius. And introverts under the even-numbered signs of Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn and Pisces. Eisner, a Pisces, born March 4, 1916, wrote, quote, "More than 2,000 men and women were sent personality questionnaires and their birth dates noted. When the results were put through the computer, the predicted relations between personality and birth date did in fact come out very clearly," end quote. He said he was surprised by the results and now wonders whether, quote, "there is perhaps a core of sense and fact under the lurid cover of the exaggerated claims and fraudulent pretense of much that goes under the flag of astrology. My instinctive skepticism and dislike of anything mystical had led me to expect unrelieved failure from any investigations of astrological predictions. I could dearly wish that I could think of some theory to explain the findings, but it seems we must dig out many more facts and support them more solidly with further investigations before we can even begin the intimidating tasks of theory construction. There may indeed be more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of," end quote. Eisner, 1971 book, quote, "Race, Intelligence and Education," end quote, supported the theory of American researchers William Shockley and Arthur Jensen that intelligence is genetically determined and largely unaffected by environment. The Americans had cited as evidence the lower IQ test ratings of American blacks compared with whites. When was this published? Eisner said the Irish in Ireland did badly on intelligence tests compared with other Western European peoples. His stand touched off a furor here, and leftist students at the London School of Economics attacked him physically in 1973. And again, this report comes to us from 1977. We might say a long time ago in many ways. Well, an odd sort of ending there to our little search through the newspaper archives for references to astrology and the word skeptical. And there are quite a few more that came through. It's interesting, I used the spelling, the British spelling with a C, not a K. But all these interesting findings just go to show once more that when you go to Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, or indeed Google Newspapers, or any online resource of digitised newspapers and magazines, it seems to me you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast this week, and thank you to all those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone via PayPal or Patreon. And you can do that at skepticzone.tv and look at all the show notes with time indicators. Is that the right word? What's the thing I'm looking for? There are time codes, so you can get quickly to each segment. Now, don't forget the Australian Skeptics National Convention is coming up, and you can get your tickets at skepticon.org.au. And that's going to be held in Melbourne on the 4th and 5th of October. In fact, less than a month away. You can meet our very own Tim Mendham there, also appearing via the intertubes, the interwebs, the whatever they are, the World Wide Web, Dave Farina, Professor Dave, Melanie Trissick-King, and in person, such people as Karen Bickersma, who you've heard on the show, Elizabeth Thinkle, Professor Baden Wood, and a host of others. And of course, once again, the host is Alanta Colley, a very funny lady indeed. Coming up on next week's show, we're going to be looking at cryptozoology, strange and mysterious creatures, part 2 of our series Gone and Forgotten, and in the Trove segment we're going to dive back to the year 1965. Yes, 60 years ago, and look for references to the paranormal and the supernatural. And just before I go, don't forget, if you visit maynard.com.au, you can see details how you can get tickets for the screening of Xanadu on the night of the 13th here in Sydney, in Newtown at the Dendy Theatre. Join Maynard and myself for a crazy night of nostalgia. But until next week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
Hello to all those people who don't give up, who hang on after the music fades for the occasional dice game. Normally we roll a D10. This week we're going to be rolling a D... What is this? It's a D20. 20-sided die. And you use your psychic predictions or your dumb luck or your good luck or your whatever to see if you can predict the outcome. I'm going to predict ahead of time. We're going to roll it 4 times. First roll, I'm going to predict 5. Second roll, I'll predict 13. Then 17. And for the last roll, I'll predict 12. Here we go. Roll number 1. 14. Oh well, better luck this time. Here it comes, roll number 2. 1. Nope. Roll number 3. Here it comes. What's that? A 6. Had to look closely because the 6 has a little underline under it so you don't confuse it with a 9. Well, not doing so well so far. Last roll. Come on, 12. Come on, 12. Here it comes. 7. No match. But for those of you playing at home, today's winning numbers are 14, 1, 6, and 7. Oh, all right. One more roll. In fact, you know what? I'll do 2 at once. I've got a D10 and the D20. Okay. So on the D10, I'm going to predict a 4. And on the D20, I'm going to predict a 3. Here we go. Wow. No, I don't believe it. The D10 is a 5. And the D20 is a 4. Oh, well.